We're thrilled that you have joined us in this session. We are giving sessions, recording sessions as fast as we can to provide good, solid Bible study for 3 Bible schools that are based in Kenya, and for those in the United States that tune in and want to hear what we have. We don't pretend to be anything we're not, but we try our very hardest, our very best to give Bible-based teaching and encouragement. And if it's out on the fringe, we just tend to leave it alone. So we hope that you're with us in that thought and that expression. And so today I want to look into chapter 4 of the book of Daniel. It's kind of unusual territory for some people, and probably for me too, but the background and the setting for chapter 4 is important to note. The Hebrew nation has been captured and taken away from their homeland as slaves by the nation of Babylon. Babylon had a very strong army, came in and defeated them and took them away captive. Daniel was used by the Spirit of God in an absolutely amazing demonstration to the king of Babylon. Not only interpreting the dream of the great statue, and I'm sure you know about the dream and have heard the interpretation of the different parts of the statue, but not only interpreting the dream that the king had, but telling him what the dream was. Now there's a level that I haven't encountered in my personal life, and I don't know if you have either. Daniel was only able to do so because of the divine revelation that God gave to him, because he's not any kind of a mystic, he's not any kind of a soothsayer, and doesn't claim to be, but God spoke to him and opened a door of opportunity for him in his ministry. As a result of that dream and that interpretation that Daniel gave to Nebuchadnezzar, the king appointed Daniel, who's literally an Israeli slave and captive of war. He's a prisoner of war. He's not free to leave. But the king sees such benefit and potential in this man that he makes him the ruler over the province of Babylon. He's in charge of the government for the province, and in addition to that, Daniel was appointed to be over all of the wise men, as they call them, all the men who were astrologers, all the men who were seance holders, all the men who were worshipers of all kinds of idol gods. And that's big, because not very often does the government get to be in charge of the religious people, the priesthood. But Daniel, a Jehovah follower, is in charge of all these other men that aren't. They're worshipers of many different gods in the Babylonian system. And the events of chapter 4, as we're jumping into the stream of things, occur about 30 years after Daniel has interpreted the dream and been appointed to these dual posts. So this is into the captivity about halfway. And the first element of this story that we will focus upon is a very real danger in our lives and is current. This is not just looking at old Israeli Hebrew history and trying to keep you awake with the interesting details. This is something very current, whether you are a Christ follower or if you are a non-believer today. The great temptation of pride. Pride is very current, and it seems that this is centered with a very powerful demonic spirit that's able to emerge or pop up in lives no matter how mature a disciple you are or become, or how young you are in the Lord and are on the milk of the Scripture and not yet on the meat, as Paul would say, pride is a problem. So we'll ask the question of what can we be prideful? What can we be proud of? Well, the simple answer is just about anything. I mean, just about anything. The enemy of our soul can use this tool in any area of our life to skew or to put sideways our godly focus, to muddle our carefully chosen priorities, and to spoil our relationship with God. Pride is very acidic, very destructive. Whatever it touches, you just can't let it into the playground at all or into your life. And I want to give you one of my brief lists, and some of you that know me know I don't like to make these lists to expand your imagination a little bit. Areas into which pride can enter. It can. Doesn't mean it has to, but there's a possibility. There's fertile ground for pride to enter. Some of these will, of course, be obvious to you and you will agree. Some of them will be very subtle and you go, well, I'm not sure about that. And others may be, well, surprising and shocking to you that you never thought of that. So let me go through a list, and I'll lean it toward, I'll say, our church world and awareness. You can be proud of your physique. You can be proud of your athleticism. You can be proud of your attractive appearance. You can be proud of your heritage and your genealogy, whether you have ancestors that came over on the Mayflower, and the daughters of the American Revolution are very proud of that, you understand, or if your ancestors came across on an African slave ship. There are those that make something out of that, maybe even a kind of a disguised form of pride. You can be proud of your family. You can be proud of your intellect, your intelligence. You can be proud of your IQ test score. Or if you're a member of the Mensa Society, they are quite amazing in their testing and membership. You can be proud of your education, your college or university, proud of being a member accepted into a fraternity or a sorority, or maybe you're proud that you didn't, that you weren't part of that group, because you didn't have your nose where they do. Maybe you've passed the exam of your profession, be it the bar exam, be it the CPA exam, and other areas of life, any form of doctorate where you had an oral examination before the board and so forth. Maybe you're proud that you joined a very prestigious blue chip company, very big, maybe a worldwide company that's doing international trade. Maybe you are proud of your highly regarded friends that have a lot of influence in your local society. People that have influence and people that have a lot of finance are prominent and highly thought of in many cases. Maybe you're proud of your income. You can be proud of that. You can. Maybe you're proud of your possessions. I know some that are proud that they don't have any possessions. They think there's some great characteristic in the Christian world to not own anything whatsoever. And you can be proud of that, proud of not having things. So it's not just people with things and people with money, but what about your denomination or your religious affiliation? I've seen some political movements here and there, and through my life I've joined and been ordained in several large organizations, and boy, oh boy, those that are, I'll say, born into it. Well, how long have you been a part of the group? Well, only 150 years. Oh, you're a newcomer. Uh-huh. You can be proud of your personal ministry position. If you've joined an organization or a church or a denomination, proud of your local church, what you've accomplished, or maybe what others have accomplished and you joined in and you've been part of the team. You can be proud of your sacrificial giving, which seems very contradictory to me. You can be proud of your fluency in prayer. Whether you have modern English, I know a couple of people, or used to, they could pray in King James English. Oh my, you talk about sounding impressive. If you had the voice and the pipes and you could pray in King James, man, I caught myself as an early young Christian. I said, I got to look up, see who this guy is. Man, that was impressive. Or maybe you're impressive. I had one man come to me and explain to me that he had 7 heavenly prayer languages, and one of them was a demonstration style because it was Native American. I thought he was kind of proud of that, and probably shouldn't have been. Shouldn't have been. What about the majesty of delivery in public speaking? There are some powerful speakers that you've heard that command a room. And boy, it'd be easy to be proud of that, of your performance art, even though you're teaching and preaching from the Bible. What about your powerful and effective personal evangelism, whether it's on the street or whether it's in a mass evangelism in arenas and stadiums? And I haven't seen the book, but I've mentioned it. The 7 steps of how I became the most humble man on earth. Now, if you're a humble man or woman, my contention is you don't know it. You're not aware of it. You're not aware of the humility level compared to other people because you don't do that. As a humble person, you would never compare your humble demeanor and your fruit of the Spirit to another person. But if you didn't really have the goods, if you had just something that looked like humility, you might be proud of that. I'm the most humble person I know. Wow. What a contradictory statement. You see, pride can creep in to just anything, even good stuff, and spoil it. Nothing wrong with being humble. Nothing wrong with being hugely humble. But if pride creeps in, there's a spoilage that occurs. I've worked with, on this particular subject, a teacher that's well known in this country and other parts of the world, but I don't want to name them. I'm not trying to promote them, but I want to give them credit when I borrow a phrase. So I'll just say a well-known teacher once said, Satan sets the bait according to the bite. Satan sets the bait according to the bite. The bite is, of course, me and you and each of us, and he tailors the bait to our bite. It's not standard issue. Not everybody is subject to the same temptations. I'm sure you've witnessed or heard the old saying in action, when the head and the ego swells, the brain shrinks. That as your ego is bigger and bigger and you think more and more of yourself, your capacity to think and to process and really analyze the situation properly shrinks. You have less ability to think because you're drunk on yourself. You're so proud of yourself you can't even think straight. And you've known somebody like that, I'm sure. Often, what I'll call the pride trap for Christians can be broken down into two elements that are very easy, at a distance at least, to identify. And that would be performance or abstinence. Those are traps, both of them. Some become prideful in the works they've accomplished that result in great benefit to other people and to the benefit of the church and the kingdom of God, and others become prideful in what they've given up for Jesus and the cause of the gospel. I think of, and this is just a story, I think of an older man sitting on a porch in a rocking chair or swing, and somebody comes by and says, "What you doing?" And he says, "Nothing." "Well, why not?" "Well, I've given up smoking, I've given up chewing, I've given up drinking, I've given up women, I've given up carousing around, I gave up gambling, I gave up bowling, I gave up pool, I don't swear. There's just a whole lot of things I don't do. I'm just sitting here being holy." You understand the contradiction? It isn't what we have given up to be a Christian. That doesn't define us. If you gave up all bad habits and all vices, it still doesn't make you a Christian. A Christian is who you are, not what you've given up. And of course, we tend to think that if I've given it up, then everybody else should also. And they ought to give it up right away. Because I'm convicted in that, then you should be convicted. And that simply isn't the case. It's different than that. So let's define pride if we can. It can be a feeling or a deep pleasure of satisfaction derived from one's own accomplishments or achievements, or the achievements of those with whom we are closely associated. You know, my friend is the president of this. My friend owns a big house and a fancy car. Or from having qualities or possessions that are widely admired. It's amazing that people buy things because somebody else admires it. Cars are a real easy target. Other possessions are purchased to impress other people. We see this element clearly demonstrated, coming back to Daniel chapter 4, in King Nebuchadnezzar's testimony, because he gives us several things that we can learn and benefit for our own lives. Even though he's a polytheistic, heathen worshiping king, we can learn some things from this man, for our own lives and our own testimony. And I'll say this: firstly, it's always good to testify to the greatness of God. There are things that parents try to teach children, and the older they get, the harder it is to teach gratitude and thanksgiving. And it seems that we need to learn that early, and it affects our entire life. And once we have become thankful, we see the greatness of God, not the smallness of ourselves, but how big He is, and how great He is, and how gracious He is in so many ways. In Daniel chapter 4, verse 2, he says this: "It is my pleasure to tell you about the miraculous signs and wonders that the Most High God has performed for me." That's what Daniel says. I like his attitude in one statement, don't you? It's my pleasure to tell you about the good things of God. Too many people, and I've been guilty of this too, you sit down to a conversation or to dinner, and I end up just talking about me. You know, like this is my favorite subject. I just want to talk about me and what I did and what I think. And Daniel says, I just get great pleasure out of telling people about the goodness and the greatness of the Most High God and what He has done for me. In reporting in what God, for what God has done in your life, you'll reveal a great need in your life, or even maybe your shortcomings. Sometimes our foolish decisions and judgments are exposed when we tell of how God intervened on our behalf and bailed us out of some deep trouble. And we have to fess up. I made a decision without asking the Lord about it. Seemed like the right thing to do at the time, but boy, it was the wrong decision. I got in big trouble, and God in His grace and mercy intervened and stopped the circus that I got started and bailed me out of it. And we take credit for making those bad decisions and how much God has changed things. In those testimonies also, I think it's good to avoid what they call TMI. Too much information. The details that are given in prayer requests and in testimonies is like, sister, you can skip a bit, you can skip over that. The advice concerning testimonies, and we'll talk a little more about this, especially given publicly, one thing, don't overemphasize what you used to be, even if it's unintentional. And I'll get kind of personal here in a few minutes. Nebuchadnezzar's 7 years of awful insanity are summarized by Daniel in verse 33 of chapter 4, and he says this, describing the king: driven away from people, ate grass like cattle, body drenched with dew, so he's sleeping outdoors, hair became matted like eagle feathers, and nails grew to be like the claws of a bird. Now that's in one short verse. That just describes terrible conditions of what happened during that 7-year period. In short, glorifying your sordid past can be skipped. Just glorify God. Just glorify God. There are those that actually gain pleasure out of hearing others' sordid stories, and I suppose they are able to live the life of sin vicariously through the testimony of other people because they've never been, out of the house so much. Even when asked to give my personal testimony of conversion publicly, I usually decline that offer or that opportunity because I know there's young people that are tempted, young people that are making decisions, and I want to avoid recalling in some detail level a life of rebellion against the call of God, rebellion against my pastor father, living a criminal lifestyle, having a drug addiction, and giving some person, any one person, the impression that I was glorifying something of which I'm ashamed. Never would I want to think that young people could safely choose those activities, miraculously live through it as I did, and turn out to be blessed of God because Mark did it and survived. Let me assure you, I'm not going to tell you the details because I don't want to. I'm not proud of that. But God saved my life many, many times. He kept me alive, literally, physically alive, because He was drawing me in. I just had tremendous protection. And for anyone else to try to take the risks that I did, thinking, hey, I'll be okay because Mark's okay, you'll die. You won't survive. So I don't glorify my past. I'm not proud of it. I don't want to talk about it. I think there's a different purpose in testimonies, and so we'll talk about that for a few moments. I think there's an overarching purpose in testimonies and ministry in general, and that is this. Number one, glorify the Son. Glorify what he has done. There was that is in what we are, what we do, what we say, and what we think. All encompassing. There was a technique during the Middle Ages, because they didn't have photography yet, when the king or the prince was looking for a wife. Well, he can't travel around interviewing, so he would send out scouts, and they would find candidates, I'll call them, candidates that were young women that might be a suitable queen. And they would paint a portrait of them. Rather than taking a photograph, they'd paint a portrait and bring back to the king and say, here's the family, here's the pedigree, here's the education, and here's what she looks like. Oh, wow. There was a technique they used that was very interesting to me. If a qualified young woman wasn't very attractive visually, but was a fine woman, lots of credentials, but she just wasn't appealing so much to the eye, they would paint a very fancy, ornate dress and a very busy background, because that's going to look attractive to the eye. It's going to make her look better than she really is. If they encountered a woman of striking beauty, they would paint a black background, so all the focus would be on her. I think, for me, my testimony needs to be that way. I want the background to be black and make the beauty of Jesus come through. I don't want to decorate what he forgave me for, the life I used to live before I was born again. I think that's detracting. You may have a different opinion, that's okay, we'll still be friends. I like to paint a black background and let the beauty of Jesus come through. I let him be seen as the Savior for who he is, with no distraction whatsoever. The second thing we need to do after glorifying the Son, we need to edify the body. That's our second objective, to build up, to encourage, and to reinforce in the very best way possible. There's an ugly way to tell a story. You can put adverbs and descriptive words injected into certain thing, and it makes you suspicious, it makes you kind of nauseous, it makes you like, oh man, I don't want any part of that. Just by the general description or the intimation of people's motivation. We need to relate the things of God in the very best way possible with the language that we have the command of. A well-known teacher, recounts being advised, and they were focusing on this pride issue, and that's still what we're talking about. And they were advised very forcefully, I'll say, sternly. Get a new Bible. Yours looks like you study it a lot. And they went, well, you see, even that, unintentionally, could give a projection of superiority that is misinterpreted. If you carry around a beaten up Bible that is just worn out because you read it and studied it, underlined it, think of what that projects to some people that will misinterpret. Everybody doesn't spin it and interpret it correctly. Your action, your words, your tone, your look, somebody's going to misinterpret it. That's just the way they are. I don't want to give them any occasion. And I took this advice from this well-known teacher. I got myself a new Bible to put in my briefcase. I said, it doesn't look like you read it very much. I read a different one. I have several dozen at home. Several dozen. And the one I carry doesn't look like I've even cracked it open. You understand? The second element of the story we'll focus on is a foundation that's laid that brings several major problems with it. We find in Daniel chapter 4, verse 4, I'll quote to you. It says, I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at home in my palace, contented and prosperous. Here we can identify the feelings of self-satisfaction, of superiority, of achievement of personal goals, and that old nemesis, pride. There's pride again with Nebuchadnezzar. You see, if we define contented, well, my definition is this: satisfied that I got my way. Whether it's an argument, a relationship, or something to purchase. Satisfied that I got my way. I'm contented. The Aramaic is an interesting word that means at ease or at rest, conveying contentment and security. And security. The relentless pursuit of security can cost us dearly. It can cost us love. It can cost us contentment in life and all of our freedom in every aspect. The pursuit of security. There are those politically that have looked at the trade-off, and those that pursue security give up freedom. They want to protect freedom, but they end up losing both. They end up not being free at all. The well-known teacher, of course, gives us an example of a younger woman being interested with and then living with an older man who obviously had no attraction. However, he's very wealthy. And so, literally, she gives up love and satisfaction in a relationship for financial security, and he may buy her affection, but he can never win or buy her heart. She's in it for the wrong reason. She has a defective motivation for money. And you've seen it. And it works the other way as well. Just the illustration is with an older person. It can work either way with men or women. If the motivation is financial security, you give up many other things if that's your primary pursuit. David wrote in Psalm 30, "Now in my prosperity I said, I shall never be moved." Often financial position can convey a false sense of security. That because you have money, you're protected, you're secure, things are stable, until you get the doctor's report. And you ask the stupid question, well, how much money does it cost to buy health, to be well? I have the money. I remember visiting a dying man in Houston, Texas. He was an old Arab Muslim, and he had given his heart to the Lord just before he died. He saw the truth in Jesus Christ for the first time, but he owned multiple businesses and properties, and here he sits gasping for breath on his bed at home, and he smiled and he said, "Mark, I've got enough money to buy all the food that I would like to eat, but the doctor won't let me eat it." He's eating, oatmeal or something. And he actually was the owner of 2 24-hour restaurants that specialized in pie, House of Pies in Houston. You could get 45 different kinds of pie 24 hours a day in that place. I mean, it was close to heaven. It really was. If you like pie. You can't eat it. Can't eat it. All the money that you can imagine. Hebrews chapter 12 tells us the promise that everything will be shaken. I said, well, that's not good. Well, why would the Lord tell us that? Why would things be shaken? So that the things that cannot be shaken are revealed. I was in Alaska when the largest earthquake in the North American continent occurred. 9.1 on the Richter scale. There's been no larger earthquake in North America ever. Lasted 5 minutes and 36 seconds. And we all thought we were going to die. That's when the earth is shaking beneath your feet. 5.5 minutes is a long, long time. The word of a 200-foot tsunami wave coming in. Of course, the lights are out. The ground is split. Not just shaken, but split and moved. And my goodness. But we found out there's a future. There is a tomorrow after events like that. We find a clear answer to our need for security that is expressed in Psalm 62, very simply. He, referring to Jehovah God, He is my rock and my salvation. He is my rock. Not people, not relationships, not money, not possessions, not feelings. He's my rock. And if you'll make Him your rock, again, today, you will find you have security, that you have stability, but only in Him, because everything else will be shaken. I want to define prosperous as well, coming from the definition in the Aramaic. I'll give you my definition first. More possessions than the Joneses. You know, the neighbors. More possessions than the Joneses. I remember being with a person that didn't have some banking and accounting background, and we went past a house, and he said, "Wow, look at this." And we saw the big pickup truck. We see a couple of nice, fancy luxury cars. We saw a trailer with a snow machine and the ski-doo on it, and looked over to the side of the house, and he's got a small airplane parked there and a boat. And the young man made this mistake. He said, "Man, that guy's got a lot of money." And it was a big house, of course. And I said, "Oh, no, you don't understand. He doesn't have any money at all." He has credit. He has a lot of credit, and he's got tons of monthly payments. He's broke. He doesn't have any money at all. But it looks like, to the uninitiated, that he has a lot of money. Prosperous, the Hebrew says luxuriant. Luxuriant. That's kind of like how your hair feels after you get a treatment or something. It's pretty nice. The Aramaic says flourishing. They define prosperous as flourishing. In Jesus' parable of the rich man, he gives no word of indication of being critical of the possessions of the man. And I know I've touched on this in previous lessons, but this is a deep mistake that I think people make. But Jesus had plenty of fire and plenty of criticism for the way the man administered his possessions. He only thought of himself. He never shared it. He prioritized. His only problem in the parable was storage. I've got to tear down my barns and build bigger barns. It never occurred to him to share his possessions with anyone, even his relatives. He's keeping everything because, well, somewhere around 2 or 3 years old, somebody sneaks into your house and teaches your kids, mine, one of the first words they come up with is mine. Not necessarily mama or papa, but they know mine. Those are my toys. Well, you're not playing with them now. Let's share them. No, they're mine. They know mine. And some people never grow out of that. They still think it's mine and it's going to be good for them. See, this man didn't understand that he was a steward and not an owner. That's what we are with the life that God has given to us, with the blessings that are manifested, with what you've received for material possessions and for money. You're a steward, my friend. There was a very rich man that owned most of America's railroads in the 1930s. And it was a big funeral. And someone spoke to his lawyer who was sitting on the front row. He said, "How much did he leave?" You know what they were asking. And the lawyer said, "All of it." There was no rental trailer, no U-Haul trailer behind the hearse, behind the funeral procession. You're not taking it with you. I heard one guy say, "Well, if I can't take it with me, I'm not going." Well, you don't have that choice, my friend. You're going to leave everything you have behind because you're a steward. And it's a test for you in a spiritual sense. What do you do with your stuff? Are you tight? Are you possessive? Or you broke my favorite little thing there. Oh, I'm so sad. It happens. Move on. Move on. This man did not understand his own spiritual need. His daily motto was eat, drink, and be merry. You know anybody like that? Plenty. Eat, drink, and be merry. Why? Because tomorrow doesn't have any impact on me. He did not understand the responsibility that he had toward others that comes with great possessions. You have a responsibility to share. So, Mark, you know, now you're just injecting your personal philosophy here. Well, God gives us grace. I'll build from here. God gives us plenty of grace, doesn't he? I think more than you really deserve, more than you really can use. What's the purpose? So that you can be a channel for God's grace to flow to another person. That some of the grace that you have been given is intended for others. Sometimes we understand that in a financial way, that part of what we have received is intended to flow to other people. But what about grace? What about mercy? What about kindness? What about those things that God has clearly shown to you? Do you let it flow through to other persons, to other people? This man did not understand the shortness of his life. And in the parable, the comment is, "Thou fool, tonight your soul will be required." Tonight. He's living as though he's going to be alive forever. As though death can't touch me, I'm rich. Oh, it touches every family. It touches every single family. And if it hasn't touched your family, I'm sad to tell you, it will. It will. It's a common experience. My disclaimer here is, in no way do I ever intend to associate possessions with any kind of guilt. That's very easy to do in America. God has blessed America and individual Americans abundantly. And in many cases, we have used our wealth for furthering the kingdom around the world. We hear good stories, and I'm not putting them down or demeaning them in any way, good stories of men from England, some from Germany, some from France and Spain, single individuals. I'll just name one. David Livingstone, who took the gospel to the central core of Africa. But that's one man. And I'm not trying to minimize what he did. Very effective missionary. Men that went to India, men that went to Tibet, men that went to Burma. In the 200 years and a little more that the United States has existed, we have sent out to the world more missionaries than all other nations combined. Because we have money. We can fund the missions. We fund the missionaries. We fund the building of churches. We fund things because we have a huge amount of wealth in this country. Might you guess? Now, we've sent more than other countries have. See, it's not even fair to compare us with another country because the numbers are so great. So that's why I've combined it together, and you can look it up. You can find the statistics. Combine all the missionaries from all the countries of the world through 2,000 years, and compared with the United States sending missionaries for 200 years. We have sent 10,000 times more missionaries than the rest of the world combined. It's a number so huge you can't even imagine it. We are a missions country. I mean, I know you can pull up instances of the ostentatious, wasteful use of millions and billions of dollars, and it riles me up too. But on the other side of the coin, we have sent missionaries like no country in the history of the earth has ever done. And it takes money. I think other countries would, but they don't have the resources. They don't have the wealth that we have. I hope that you have visited other countries and you would take opportunity to witness the condition of the poor and the oppressed. If you've not, for a starter, please go on the next trip you can find. Find a church that's doing a short mission trip, 5 days, 2 weeks. Go somewhere, build a church. I guarantee your heart will be changed forever concerning your wealth and your perspective of supporting missions from your local church. I'm not asking for an offering here. I've been in 28 countries multiple times. I'm not asking for your funds. I'm asking you to fund through your local church, whoever's watching this. I don't want you to send me money. Let me give you a personal story. I know the details of this very well. On the evening of May 21st, 2011, a friend was standing in front of their home in Joplin, Missouri. They were involved in a discussion with another friend, a very young Christian, and their burning issue was whether Christians could justify owning possessions, nice possessions or not, or if you owned a lot of things, is there any way you can stay a Christian? He was very young, but you understand the view. They looked at the modest home that was very nice, sporty red Cadillac sitting in the driveway. The friends swept their hand across the view and stated from their heart, if all this were taken away tomorrow, I would be just fine living in a tent in Zimbabwe, Africa. It's exactly what they said. 24 hours later, on the 22nd, the most ferocious tornado in United States history swept through Joplin, Missouri, a city of about 52,000 people. It was a very strong EF5. In fact, the Weather Service considered making a new category, EF6, because no tornado had ever been so strong before. It was a mile wide, had multiple vortexes, 3 that were counted. According to insurance claims, it was the most costliest tornado ever experienced in history. There were 16,000 claims filed, totaling $2.8 billion with a B, billion dollars. You've guessed by now that that house that they motioned to was swept away in the internal winds of this tornado that reached 310 miles per hour. It's just unbelievable power. In the aftermath, they and the friend in the conversation from the day before were inspecting all the soggy pieces of debris. And it was awful. The house had a basement, and of course collected lots of moisture in the process. The first item they saw in the remains of the basement was a camp tent. And the friend immediately blurted out, "I think I see a one-way plane ticket to Zimbabwe attached to your tent." And they began to laugh, knowing that God was in control, and weather events alone cannot stop the blessing and favor of God upon his obedient children. That 24 hours before, all this could be swept away and I'll be fine, they said. Sure enough, that's exactly what happened the very next day. 24 hours almost on the dot. Not trusting in possessions. I want to give you some boggling statistics, and it's under the heading, "If the world was a village of 100 people." There are so many people in the world today that when we give large numbers, it's hard to process them, or as people say, to wrap your brain around it. So if the whole world, with its proportions and its holdings, were reduced to a village of 100, we can think of that. We can process 100 people. Okay? So now we've got the world in a tiny village of 100 people. 24 people would have a television. 7 people would have a computer. 9 people would speak English. 6 people would be Americans. 70 people would be non-white. 1 person would have a college degree. 20 people would not have had 1 day in school. 30 people would be unemployed. 6 people would own 59% of the wealth of the world, and they would all live in the United States. 18 people would own a car. 3 people would be slaves. 40 people would not own a pair of shoes. 33 people would not have electricity. 50 people would not have a reliable source of edible food. 25 people would not have shelter. 23 people would drink polluted water. And 43 people would not have basic sanitation. But all 100 people would need Jesus. I would like to take a laser beam and go into your brain and touch your vocabulary. Christians, believers, Christ followers that are watching today. And I would like to erase from your vocabulary on a permanent basis the word luck. My friend, you're not lucky. You're blessed. So what's the same thing? No, it isn't. So I'll ask you this question. Who's in charge of luck? According to Scripture. Does anybody ever tell you, well, good luck and God bless you? I usually hold on to their hand and go, you got to pick one. One is real and the other is fantasy. Did you know that luck doesn't exist? There's no bad luck. There's no good luck. There is the blessing of God upon your life, and then there's the absence of it. But luck? Don't tell me. Thank your lucky stars. What kind of astrologist are you? Oh, I'm a Christian. No, you're not. Not if you're thanking lucky stars. Thank God. Well, it's the same thing. You know what I mean. No, I know what you said. And you need to thank God and not be ashamed to thank Him in public. I want to go back to Daniel chapter 4 for just a few moments. There was a second vision of King Nebuchadnezzar. In verse 8 it shows us while Nebuchadnezzar had acknowledged Daniel's God was clearly superior, he did not give up his own God of preference. Just because people acknowledge Jesus as superior doesn't mean that they've come over and looked to Him exclusively. They drag their stuff with them. You know, they're praying, and I heard this phrase the other day. This is terrible. Here they're praying to Jesus for an answer to prayer, and they've got a crystal hanging in their Bible, and they're burning sage in the room to kind of help their prayer and kind of persuade Jesus to have an answer. Come on. This is an exclusive commitment that we make that has nothing to do with these other things. The discipleship program of Daniel must have been full of great frustration to get the polytheistic worship of multiple gods mindset out of King Nebuchadnezzar. He's been there for years, and Nebuchadnezzar just won't come around. Discipling people in Babylon. Can you think of the nightmare that would be? I think it'd be very close to what we're currently up against in this culture. Either no God, atheists, or multiple gods that are very pleasure-oriented. But Daniel didn't give up because of slow progress. And we're not going to give up either. But God believed it was time for severe discipline of the king. Daniel didn't push this button. God said. And there was a vision given to King Nebuchadnezzar of a great tree. It was of enormous height. It was large. It was strong. And the top touched the sky in the vision. It was visible to the ends of the earth, had beautiful leaves, abundant fruit, had food for all, shelter for animals, and room in the branches for many birds to nest. It was a gigantic tree. The holy messenger then comes with the command, cut it down. The interpretation by Daniel contained very bad news for Nebuchadnezzar, and he was humbled like we can't even imagine. He would live in a terribly insane condition for 7 years. The good news is that the king would survive and be restored, the promise was, when you acknowledge, I'm quoting, you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over the kingdoms of men and gives them to anyone He wishes. When you acknowledge that the sovereign God is in control, He's not wishy-washy, He's not sharing responsibility and power. He exclusively makes the decisions. Daniel's interpretation, including the cutting down of the tree and the leaving of the stump and the roots so that the tree could have the possibility of being regrown in the future. So Nebuchadnezzar is going to be cut down at the stump, at the roots, but the roots are going to be left. Another tree can grow in the course of time. The advice of Daniel was given to the king, included the primary sin of which God was displeased. It's described by a well-known teacher this way: a willingness, and we're talking about King Nebuchadnezzar, and we've painted him pretty dark, a willingness to sit contentedly in luxury without concern for the oppressed. There's a lot of people in that position today. A lot of people. It's a primary sign to us personally of the corruption of Babylon having crept into our heart, that we can sit in luxury and contentment and not care about the oppressed in any sense whatsoever. And so I'll bring this to your attention, and I don't have a self-righteous finger pointing with it, but I just want to ask the question, what are you doing about the oppressed today? Please don't tell me of your plans for the future. Please don't. What are you doing about the oppressed today? What are you doing to relieve those without the gospel message in its fullness? Because that's what changes people. It's not just government subsidy. It's not just offerings and money thrown at a problem. It is the gospel message of Jesus Christ that literally changes people's lives. But Mark, what can I do? Well, the first thing you do is you pray. You pray for their souls and the needs of their soul to be met. Second thing you can do is to get involved. Whether it's labor or involved in a missions project that I mentioned before, a trip to another country, another culture. There are other cultures even within this country that you can go to if you don't want to travel internationally. You can go to places of need within the United States that will touch and break your heart. And then the giving of finances is always on the list. The conditions of many people in the world is sobering. But let me tell you, it does not steal away your joy in the Lord. That remains. For in this ministry, He supplies and resupplies the joy. I can testify to that reality of experience in my own life and ministry over many years, over decades. Some of you are aware of my full-time involvement for 4 or 5 years in the founding of Home of Hope in Texas, of a rehabilitation center for long-term treatment of trafficked women and sex slaves who are rescued. I believe in compassion-based ministries, such as this one. If you can see the need and walk away without a change of heart and becoming involved in the solution, then you didn't understand the depth of the need, and that in your involvement, you becoming involved in some level, in prayer, in activity, in giving, that you become involved in a compassion-based ministry and you can make a difference in the world. You may not believe that. That may seem too lofty of a goal, but I assure you, it is the truth. People that care, and care enough to be motivated into action. Prayer, labor, involvement, finances. And you, as a single human being, can make a difference for eternity with people that we are conveying the gospel to by every means necessary. I hope you've received some things to think about tonight, and will pray about your involvement in a compassion-based ministry somewhere in the world, either in your hometown, in your own country, or across the world. God bless you tonight. Thank you so much for watching tonight. Amen.
This program has been produced by A Life Devoted to Ministry, LTD Production, and is home of training trainers to lead. We hope you enjoyed this program. For more information or to support our ministry, please visit ldtms.org.